Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I'm JayBee and joining me as always is Milly.
Hi.
We have Rhianna.
Hello.
And we are also once again joined by Tori.
Hi.
Now, our special guest today that we are going to have the pleasure of interviewing is Mr. Bill Haller.
Hey everybody, great to see you. Thanks for having me, you guys. Awesome.
No, not a problem at all. Thank you so much for joining. And I suppose we're going to be talking about your time as, the head animator in Scoob and eventual director of Scoob Holiday Haunt. But going back to the beginning in terms of the chronology of your career, we understand from IMDb that it started as a kind of supervising animator on Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. But what kind of started your journey into animation before even that?
Yeah, actually, Tor, I love that shirt you've got. I don't think I've ever seen a Scoob with a Santa. That is brilliant. I love it.
In honor of Holiday Haunt, I decided to wear.
Oh, I appreciate that. Actually, before anything, thank you guys so much for supporting us, with all that's been going on with Holiday Haunt. I am a strong believer that, this is coming out someday. You're going to see it. And you are going to love it. We honestly, me and Michael, we're both fans of the series. We're huge fans of the series, maybe as much as you guys, I don't know, but you seem like pretty big fans, which I love. We're fans of the show from long ago. We tried to play homage to it as much as possible, especially the original. And, there was a lot of passion that went into this movie, and I'll talk about it maybe at the end, or whatever you want to talk about. But I think when so much passion is put into something as much as we did, it perseveres and it will get out there, and you guys are gonna see it, and hopefully you guys are gonna love it, because we made this for the fans, for ourselves as fans, and I think it's gonna be a great one. But we'll get to that for sure. Yes, and thank you for your support with the I know on change.org you guys did a petition, which was really, really awesome. That was really great.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's just we're in such a weird position at the moment where a lot of the kind of more American-based shows, I think they kind of tend to have some type of affiliation with Warner and stuff like that. Whereas with us, we're almost like the problem children of the community. So we were just there swinging, come on, let me at them. We're gonna do what we can. Yeah, come on, I can see it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I believe it makes a difference. My son created one too. I almost wish we would have all combined, because I heard there's 3 other petitions too out there. And I almost wish we would have all just combined these, but then again, maybe everybody should have done a petition. So it's really great.
No, I was only aware of the 2, but I guess it's a testament to the love of the fan base, considering that there appears to be so many. Yeah. I mean, there is a fan base. That's great. Okay, so back to your original, you wanted to talk about origins and I guess what got you into the animation profession all the way back before your, I guess, first IMDb credit.
Yeah, because even before I got in, before I I did Scooby Doo 2, I worked in, well, actually even before that, I wanted to be an animator from a pretty early age. I had a weird path to get to where I got, but early on I was a big fan of my parents were always taking me to movies. They brought me to a lot of movies I probably shouldn't have been to. I remember being in the theater and seeing Jaws in the theater, and I remember my dad covering my eyes for the bad parts. There was a part where they pull an arm out of a bucket, and I remember him closing my eyes, but I could still see through my fingers. And I could see the screen, and I saw the whole thing, and my eyes were really wide, and he thought I didn't see it, but I did. But they brought me to a lot of movies and showed me a lot of movies. One of the things I was really inspired by, well, a couple of things growing up, the Ray Harryhausen type of work. There was these movies like the Jason and the Argonauts and Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and that. Which honestly, Scoob Holiday Haunt, we played so much homage to so many movies, and one there was no way I wasn't getting in there was some of the characters from Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. So there is some inspiration there. You know, maybe I'll talk about it later. but anyway, so that was a big thing. Jim Henson was actually a big thing for me too. Like I was really intrigued by, you know, all the Jim Henson work that was done. That like when Dark Crystal came out, I remember drawing the poster. Like I just replicated it. Like I love these characters and wanted to see them come to life so bad. So that was a real inspiration. And then, you know, the Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera, you know, like I say this all the time, like it's a real honor. And I said this to Frank Welker just last week when we showed him the movie. You know, if like I was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, and me and my sister, we would sit down on Saturday mornings and they would have the cartoon lineup, and that's how you watch cartoons. It wasn't really during the week. It was Saturday morning was the time when they showed all this stuff, and they had a lineup, and me and my sister would literally fight over the lineup, like what channel we're going to watch, what show we're going to watch. And we'd prepare, because they would show you a week ahead of time what was coming out, and we would line it up. And Scooby Doo was kind of at the head of the lineup for me. So, you know, if you had to go back then to the 8-year-old me and say, hey, someday you're going to be directing a Scooby Doo movie, I don't know if I would have believed you. It's amazing. And it's not only amazing, but it's an honor and a responsibility, like to, you know, do this right, you know? So that was a huge inspiration. I love scary and monsters, and I just think that lends so well to animation. So, you know, like, so that was kind of my start. Now growing up, like once I got into like high school, so I was drawing all the time. I was trying to create, I created flip books a lot, like in school. That was a big thing for me. There came a point in around high school where I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do. And I honestly, from this early age, I wanted to be an animator and I wanted to be a pilot. These were the two things. They're on two different spectrums. So there came a point in high school where I was like, you know what, I'm going to try, you know, I want to be a fighter pilot, you know, Air Force and all that. And I did actually end up going into the Air Force and trying to run that route after high school. I remember my art teacher in high school telling me, Mrs. Davies, I remember her, like when I was graduating, she was like, Bill, I know you're going to the Air Force and you're going to do this whole, like this thing. She's like, but don't forget about art, because you have something. You might want to consider this as a career. So it was kind of one of the best advice I think I got, because that carried through me with me for a long time later. But anyway, you know, I found out in the Air Force that it was very competitive to be a pilot. I mean, there was people with pilot training that weren't even able to get a slot to do it. So there came a point where it's like, well, I think I'm going to get out and I'm going to go into animation instead. But I had a great time in the Air Force. I got to actually do a real, like, I'm really proud of it. Because my grandfather, I'm kind of rabbit trailing here. My grandfather was a tail gunner in World War II, and he was shot down and killed. So I always kind of played tribute to that. And that story is a movie. Honestly, that's a Spielberg movie, like what he went through, because people survived from the plane. It's an amazing story. My mom talked to one of the survivors. So anyway, that kind of drove me when I was in the Air Force to join this unit, a special duty unit called the Presidential Honor Guard. And they're like the people that do funerals at Arlington Cemetery, and you know, they're around the you know, the White House and all that kind of stuff. I was a part of this rifle unit that spun the weapons, the drill team, which we traveled around. It was really cool. I have a scar on my back from one of the bayonets that hit me one time. But it was a really cool unit. But anyway, as I was doing that, I was already deciding that I was going to get out, and I started drawing again and started my training towards going back into animation. And so, you know, after I get out, I went to school and you know, and then quickly got a job in San Francisco. And there I worked in commercials commercials and TV for a good, like, I don't know, 8 years during the mid to late 90s, you know, before I kind of went into features. And that was a great time for me. I worked with a lot of amazing directors and people like one of the people I got to work with. I was at this company called Wild Brain, which was really great. It was a company that had a lot of different directors that did different media. Like Robert Valley was one of the directors. I don't know if you know his work, but it's pretty interesting and amazing and different than what other people are doing. Gendy, I think, actually even did a stint through there. But anyway, I got hooked up with a director named Carl Willett there, who was a stop motion director, and worked on like Hershey Kisses commercials with him, which was really interesting. I did a lot of Hershey Kisses commercials in the beginning. He's the guy who actually animated the one that you see every year. I don't know if you get that in the UK with the Hershey Kisses at Christmas with the bells.
Yeah, I know that one.
They do it every year, I think for 30 years now or 40 years. Like he was the animator on that. But anyway, he was very well connected. He grew up in Mill Valley, California, and he grew up with David Fincher and Henry Selick. They were buddies. I know you had Peter Crossman on your show at one time. I know Carl knows Peter really well. It was just like a really great art community at that company, Wild Brain, where you really got to know, interesting type of animation, different. Like there was cutout animation, there was 2D, there was 3D, there was stop motion, there was like everything you could think of. So it was a great training ground into, seeing things from a big perspective, and, anything goes in this medium, which is really cool.
Well, it certainly sounds like you've had, an incredible journey into and through animation, and we're so happy that you did, make the change back to doing what it is you do now, because there's so many projects you've worked on that we're, enjoyed so much and so excited to talk about. But kind of still almost back at the beginning, I know you're saying that, Saturday morning was a big thing for watching cartoons and everything like that. Do you think there's any, animated features or animators themselves that stand out as, inspiring you to want to progress into that career?
Yeah, definitely. Don Bluth definitely had a big influence on me, like The Secret of Nim. I remember when that came out, and it was kind of one of the first times when I saw the name of somebody and I was like, wait, that's an animator. That's somebody, that I could become. And then Dragon's Lair, the video game, came out. Big time, my favorite video game of all time, which was, it was really hard game. But like I just couldn't wait to look at the animation in it, and so he was a big influence. Obviously, like Walt Disney, my parents would bring me to every Disney feature that was out. So that was certainly a big influence. In Disney, one of the people that I was intrigued with the most was kind of Disney's early right-hand guy, Iwerks. I remember reading stuff about him and the history, and I found out like he was claiming to be the fastest animator, in the world, and was talking about his footage that he would do and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I want to, and he just looked like somebody who's very serious about what he does. I saw, like, honestly, like I went, his daughter or his granddaughter did a biography about him, and I always thought it was interesting. They said that he got into bowling, and he was in bowling and archery, but bowling, he got a bowling ball and he would go in these and bowl all the time. And one day he bowled a perfect 300 game, and he took his bowling, he came home, took his bowling ball, put it in the bag, put it in the closet, and never bowled again. It's like, wow, that says a lot about that guy. But I always admired his, his drive and the things he was doing, his ingenuity. Like I love hearing about how this industry started and the way, these guys figured it out. I love that. I feel like I'm a little bit a part of that with CG animation, as it's starting. I was kind of there at the start when it switched over from 2D to 3D. That company Wild Brain that I was at, that was one of the places that was a 2D house and then switched over to 3D. And I saw it happen, and I tried to help a lot of the 2D people switch over because you know I learned 2D and my mindset, I still think 2D, I still do, and tried to help them switch over. But it was a sad day. I remember when I saw just 100, or not hundreds, but many 2D desks just in a big room, you know, with one person there. I was like, oh man, what happened to their 2D department? And then later on, you know, I started to learn animators, like I learned about Glenn Keane and kind of studied his work. You know, got to work with him just for a little bit on a test for Over the Moon, which was really great. And then you know, learned about people like Irv Spence, like he was a Scooby Doo animator at one time too. Bobe Cannon, you know, Robert Cannon, who, you know, John Sibley, who was not one of the super popular, he wasn't one of the, you know, the best Disney guys, but he was kind of more on the B team, but he did a lot of the work that I love, like Goofy shorts, which I really like, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, like that really broad type, Sword in the Stone, with the wolf, like that kind of broad animation that I really gravitate towards. So those were kind of my heroes. Yeah, and
So,
Ray Harryhausen, of course.
Sorry. And of Scooby Doo Monsters Unleashed, do you kind of recall how you became involved with that movie?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, like the working at some of the places I worked with in San Francisco. After I left Wild Brand, I went to this company, Giant Killer Robots, which was probably one of the coolest, has one of the coolest names, of course, and one of the coolest companies I think I've ever worked with or worked for. You know, it was a group of, like, you know, little less than 100 people at their max. But the three owners were on the box working and doing things, which was really cool. And they were very well connected in the San Francisco animation community. They had worked on Matrix and a lot of more visual effects movies, but they got work on the first Scooby Doo movie, to do kind of the CG heads that of Fred Velman, Daphne, and everybody in Scooby Doo, the first Scooby Doo movie. And they had worked on Monkey Bone too, so and did a lot of the CG stuff in that. So they were connected with Peter Crossman pretty well, and Peter knew them. And so I came over, and they asked me if they had already got, I think I got awarded the job for Scooby Doo 2, and they asked me to come over and work on 10,000 Volt Ghost, and Cotton Candy Glob, and you know, Black Knight Ghost. So they did a lot more of the monster characters in there, and their relationship with Peter was really good. And they, you know, so I was like, man, are you kidding? Scooby Doo movie? You know, I'd love to work on that.
Wow.
Especially some of the iconic characters that I loved as a kid. You know, like how often do you get to do that?
That's incredible. I feel like I've just completed part of a jigsaw, having spoken to Peter Crossman, and that was like more the Riverman Hughes side. That was like, okay, we got Scooby and the Skeleton Man. And I was like, I wonder who did the monsters, and now to hear that side of things is just incredible.
Yeah, and that was really, like, it was really cool early on in that show. One of the things that we were trying to figure out the monsters. I don't think they had totally realized the monsters so much. So we took a trip down to Warner Brothers to, you know, talk to Raja, the director, who's really awesome. I've worked on 3 Raja films now, and you know, try to figure out, give the monsters a little bit more character. And we're in the conference room, and they're like, well, let me bring the writer in. He was like, maybe he can help. And I go with the writer, and we go into his office. He's all these monster books and crazy stuff. And this was before he was probably really well known. This was James Gunn, who was the writer on that. So it was great, like him pulling out all these comic books and different things, and we're sitting on the floor trying to look for inspirations, which was pretty good. Yeah, that was a real highlight.
That's so cool. And what's really nice is that the more people we speak to who worked on these projects, it seems like so many of you are fans of the show before, like, the movies actually came out. And, you know, you said that you're a huge fan, which I'm so glad you got to work on it, first of all, because the monsters turned out, like, they were so good, and they were just the right amount of scary and like not scary at the same time for kids to watch, and it was perfect. So, you said that you were very familiar with the Scooby franchise, but do you remember any episode or possibly one of the older movies that really drew you into Scooby, or what was it about Scooby that you liked?
Well, I like I love the idea of being scary and being funny. I like to be, I like just being scared is one. I think that's why I like the Evil Dead movies too. It's like, and that's a little bit more on the scary side, but I love that it leans on funny too. You get really scared, but then you get to laugh, and it's a little bit ridiculous. And I don't know, that I just gravitated towards that. Legend of Sleepy Hollow is and it's probably one of the shorts that Disney did that I reference on almost every movie I work on for something. I love that, that juxtaposition of like very scary kind of things happening, but then it tips into comedy, just at the right moments, and trying to figure out when that is, when you do that's been one of the fun things of directing is trying to, make people laugh and make people scared, and towing that line as much as you can. I really love that. I think it's a good thing. Same thing with like Christmas. I think there's something magical, I say this all the time, about Christmas and scary. And horror, like there's something there,
I mean,
so.
JayBee does make sure that we watch The Nightmare Before Christmas
and
every
Gremlins,
Christmas.
Anna and the Apocalypse. All of my Christmas movies have some element of horror to it, and I kind of feel like maybe a psychologist needs to evaluate me at some point, but it's just true. I can't not. But it's incredible. Like, if there's one thing that really divides, the Scooby fans, I think it has to be that first live action movie before Monsters Unleashed. If you speak to a Scooby fan, I feel like they either absolutely despise it because it isn't Scooby, or they absolutely love it because it updated Scooby for, I guess, what they eventually became as people. It's kind of like a timepiece from the early 2000s. And so, having worked on Monsters Unleashed prior to that, did you ever refer back to the 2002 movie? Did you see it came out? What was your relationship like with that movie before coming on to the sequel?
Yeah, because I worked mostly on the monsters, so we didn't really do too much Scooby on that, on the Monsters Unleashed. So I did, of course, I look back on it because other people at the company, Giant Killer Robots, they had worked on it. So yeah, we looked at it and we talked about it, and we tried to stay true to, because it was Raja directed both movies, so we were trying to stay true to that first movie too, because it was his vision. I do have to admit, like when the first one came out in 2002, I was working at the company Wild Brain, and again, it was a lot of 2D animators, a lot of 2D purists, and the reaction to seeing the Scooby, was mixed at best. And I thought about that when I started on the Scoob, the first Scoob movie. There was some stuff I was like, well, I don't want this person to say anything about the smile line missing or anything on Scoob. I want to make sure I get everything right. So yeah, it was a little bit of a mixed bag reaction, but I just love the franchise. So my kids still love those first two live action movies, and that now they're late teens. So
I think we can agree that we like it too. Quite often if it's JayBee's choice of movie, it's going to be one of the live action Scooby movies. So they still are incredible to watch to this day. But I guess a question about in your early career, you're sometimes credited as the supervising animator on projects like Fantastic Four, animator in Son of the Mask, and character animator in Monster House. So to people not involved in the craft of animation and that kind of thing, what are some of the differences in those titles?
Yeah, that's really just like leadership. And I like to go, but like sometimes I just love to animate. I haven't been able to do that in a really long time, when if it's just animator or senior character animator, that means you're just on a box and you're animating all day, which is great. If it's supervising, then you're leading a team, or leading a show, like in some cases. So that's the big difference. It's really just in supervision and how much you get to animate. You know, I love to animate. So like even, well, Scoob Holiday Haunt, I really didn't get to animate. I was like, man, as a director, I would love to animate a shot. Tony said the same thing on the first one, but he didn't get to. Yeah, that's the big difference. Hey, and back to like the originals too. One thing I did take big time from the live action ones, Shaggy, Matt Lillard's performance in that was stellar. That the guy's a genius, and he's literally a mime, like a trained mime in real life. And so we definitely looked at his performances in both those movies to drive our Shaggy in the later movies. In both, even Holiday Haunt, I pointed the animators to him. You know, there's just things he does with his body that are really interesting that makes him Shaggy. He's a great Shaggy.
Yeah, I think I saw a clip. It was like kind of grainy footage, but it looked like, you know, the Tonight Show of, you know, the 2000s, and you have like a side by side of him walking exactly like Shaggy from the original 1969 show. It's uncanny, really. It's
funny because when on the first movie, and we can get to it, but we were trying to figure out Shaggy's walk, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working. We even went back to the original drawing, we went to the archives in Warner Brothers and took out the keys, and we had the exact white walk cycle of Shaggy and tried to replicate it in 3D, and it just wasn't quite working. And then we went to Matt Lillard and we started to study the way he was walking and the different things he was doing with his hands and his arms and his body and the twists. And once we did that, then it's like, okay, there's Shaggy. And then we got it. It was like there's these nuances that he was doing that, like, you know, just make him Shaggy. Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
So having worked on so many of these iconic titles, Narnia, Fantastic Four, Hotel Transylvania, which is one of my also favorites, is there like one particular movie that you've worked on that you were just absolutely the most proudest of?
Ooh, we talked about this the other day at a lunch. And I would probably have to say Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I was just an animator on that movie, but it was just an amazing experience all around. I mean, obviously I'm going to say Scoob Holiday Haunt because I love this movie and I love the franchise and I love Scooby Doo, but there was something about that movie. You know, it was a tough time at Sony because Sony was going through some trouble. And then all of a sudden this movie comes in and these two young directors, Chris and Phil, who I think they had done Clone High before. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but it's a pretty bizarre show. It's kind of about like these famous people that have been cloned and then they all go to high school together. And it's just a really interesting, it was I think it was on MTV, but it was a really great show. And their sensibilities I saw immediately. It's like, oh man, these guys are nuts. This is going to be really funny. And Cloudy was that. It was just like really, really fun show. And that's where I met Michael I met Michael before that. Me and Michael both worked on that show together, but I had met him when I first got to Sony.
Oh, okay. So that was going to be something I was going to ask, was these guys had the great pleasure of speaking with Michael, and he had also worked on Hotel Transylvania. So we didn't know if that was where your paths had initially crossed.
No, and he worked on the second one. I worked on the first one. He worked on the second one, and I had left right before that second one. Well, a little bit before that one started. So yeah, we had met when Sony first started with Spa. They started their first feature open season. And that was a really cool time because all these people from all over the industry got recruited to come there. And so you had just a hodgepodge of animators and, you know, visual development people and lighters from everywhere, and modelers, all coming together to form a new studio. So it was a really exciting time. It was really interesting. And like even just there was this one guy, Alex, that I was taught that I used to, he sat really close to me that I talked to, you know, like all the time. And he just had a normal name, Alex Williams. And he would always dress really nice, I remember. And one day before he I think he only stayed for open season, then he left. One day towards the end, he was talking about Richard Williams, and he's another guy that I admired growing up, with like one of my hero animators. And I was like, and he said something about that connected him to him, and I was like, wait, Alex, do you know Richard Williams? He's like, yeah. He's like, that's my dad. I was like, what? I was like, all this time I didn't know this, so it was weird. Ed Catmull's son was on that show too, Ben Catmull, which was interesting. And then the actor Napoleon Dynamite, the actor, he's a twin, and his twin brother was an animator on Monster House. So that was kind of weird too. I went to the bathroom one time and out comes Napoleon Dynamite. I was like, what? And I did a double take. He's like, I know you think I'm your brother. It's my brother. I'm a twin. And it's really funny. But it was a cool time. Like, there was a lot of really, really great talent that came through. I feel privileged to have came there at that time. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And
that's incredible.
When I got there, this was the biggest thing, and it's what kept me there. On open season, I loved working on that show. Directors were great. Jill Colton, Roger Allers, and Tony Stacci, all awesome directors. My lead, Sean Mullen, was really great. But when I was there, I heard about this other project that was supposed to start very soon called Hotel Transylvania. And all I heard was like cartoony monsters. And this is bringing me back to my Scooby Doo. Like, I have to work on this show no matter what. And I stayed, I stayed and just chased that show the whole time till it finally, got made. And I had a big part of it, which was even better, like in the development. I was on that show for probably 2 or 3 years, which was really cool.
That's so awesome. Like, all of the memories just must be incredible, because even you just telling us them, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I can picture everything happening as you were telling me, and it's so cool and it sounds amazing. And you mentioned Hotel Transylvania, which it's such a great movie and everything, and the team behind it, there were so many people. So do you have any standout memories from working on that movie that you would like to tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on that one. Yes, of course. And when I first came on it, it was different directors. At that point, it was Todd Wilderman and Chris Jenkins directing, and they were making we were doing it in a kind of a cartoony style, but a little bit more Disney type of style, and everything was going really great. But then the studio had which happens a lot of times, the studio had an issue, and they wanted to get new writers, and it went on hold, and then just kind of went on hiatus for a little while. And I have, I'm trying to think, do I have some footage too I can show you from, I pulled some Hotel T clips, which was kind of fun. Because I did do a lot of development on this. A lot of times what you do when you start on a movie in development, you try to figure out the characters ahead of time, and so you'll take different voices, like you try to figure out who the actors or what a good actor would be for the cast, and then you throw that voice onto the rig, and then you start to play with it and see what possibilities, and sometimes that'll drive studio decisions for the voice talents too, which is good. Yeah, I guess I could. Here, let me share. I'll share a couple tests with you that I can show that I know have never seen the light of day. This is like, we got the witches characters, and in the first iteration, they were a bigger part. So I took a clip from Monty Python Flying Circus and animated these guys to this, and it's just like two witches. What they do, like they're down in the dungeon sweeping up.
It'll be so anticlimactic. Yes, kill it now, that's what I say. Yes. We're going to have our budgie put down. Really? Is it very old? No, we just don't like it. It'll be so
So it's like, let me see if I can find, here's another, here was our mummy when he started. This is one of our first mummy tests. And at this point he had a head dress on too.
Look at these guys. What happened? You miss me?
So just pulled a clip from The Hangover. Shrunken Heads. This is one we had to test too. This was kind of interesting. So I of course I love Jim Henson on Labyrinth. I pulled a clip from Labyrinth and just tried to animate it on the head just to make sure the shrunken head was the face was going to hold up.
Go back while you still can.
So yeah, it's a good way like to test. It's almost like you do a test before you get into the movie. It's either you're going to do it during the movie and figure it out, or you can do it ahead of time and try to do a pre-test for it. But yeah, Tor, back to your original question. Like one of the highlights. Okay, after this, the movie kind of went on a hiatus for a while. They, a bunch of people left the show, including our directors, which was sad. I really loved working with Todd and Chris, and I've worked with Todd before. But there was only 3 of us on the show at the time, and we all went. They gave us an option. They said you can go over to Arthur Christmas or you can go over to Smurfs. I'd worked with Raja before, so I was like, well, I'll go to Smurfs because I know his sensibilities, and then that was a fun experience just to work on that franchise. Because honestly, like during the '80s, I loved the Smurfs, so that was a fun experience. But then, part that was for about like 4 or 5 months, or if that, and then we got news that Adam Sandler had signed on to the Hotel T project and was wanting to be Dracula. And then even better, we heard that Genndy Tartakovsky had gone on, and I knew him from Samurai Jack, and was always a big fan of him. It was a little intimidating when he came in because we were like, wow, Genndy, like, what's he going to want to do here with this show? And we kind of showed him all the footage that we had done. We did a lot of tests. I did even more tests than that. And we showed him all the footage, and he gave a really nice compliment to it. He said, look, what you guys did is great, and I love it. The animation's good. I have no issues with it, but I want to do something different. And that statement, like, kind of resonated with us. Like, uh-oh, what is Genndy wanting to do here? So that's when we really saw his sensibilities. And he wanted to go into a little bit more broad Cartoon Network type of feel to the show, which was great. And we had already kind of, a lot of us had already experienced this from Cloudy, like of doing something different. That was one of the highlights of Cloudy, I think, was we were doing an animation style that the world hadn't really seen with CG before. Like I had a lot of friends at Pixar. I showed them my Cloudy shots, and they were like, I don't get it. Like, what is this? It's different, and at that time there was a mentality that you could not take a CG character and just have it still in a pose. Like, it would die. Everybody thought, it's dead. You have to have it moving and watery. And I think on Cloudy, we kind of like, we never really had characters hold. We had just like a little micro hold, like, movement on them, so they wouldn't quite die. On Hotel T, we held it completely, and proved it. Like, you can do it. You like, it doesn't die if you have a strong enough pose and do a strong enough statement. It lives. So that was really cool. Also, like when Genndy came on, because there was so much development work that was done on it before, they only allowed him to change 2 characters. So Mavis had to stay the same as far as the model, even though we tweaked her a little bit in animation. But he was allowed to redesign Dracula and Jonathan. And everybody else kind of had to stay the same. And that was a challenge because the rigs weren't really designed, the puppets weren't designed really to do what we were about to do. So we had to create a lot of deformers to try to, make this thing, do what we needed to do. Like, Genndy would do this outrageous drawing over top of our work, and like, well, how do we how do we make Frankenstein look like this? You know, it was crazy. So that was a lot of fun. That was a really fun challenge of the show, for sure. And honestly, one of my highlights, I can share too, like I got to do kind of the very first Dracula test for Gendy to try to figure out what this character is going to be. Like we hadn't done anything, and all I was going to do was I was just going to do a walk, and let's see how Dracula walks. And it was funny. I had a little bit of thing with one of the other animators about legs and when you walk and how straight they are. And so I was just joking around. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make Dracula. I'm not going to bend his legs at all. I'm just going to make them completely straight, almost like a scissors. And I'm just going to have him go straight across the scene, almost like he's floating, you know, kind of like Gary Oldman in the Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know, I was always inspired by that. And so I did this walk cycle, and then I turned it into a little animation test and just started to play with style and snappiness of characters. And it was one of the first ones. Gendy was like, okay, yeah, there we go. And then we got something. Let's build off of this. So let me show you that test, because I don't think anyone outside of Sony has probably ever seen this. But this was the very first one. Here we go. You see that?
Oh,
Okay.
wow, yeah, it's perfect.
Oh.
So I was just playing around with the timing of the character, poses, keeping them still, you know, and just a little bit of fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that's kind of where we started, for sure, with that show. Yeah.
Hotel Transylvania is definitely, I feel like it's one of those movies that's going to stand the test of time, because it's the whole, like every single time I've watched it, whether it's the first, second, like it's all so good, and it's got so many moments, and it's always so admirable to like hear how everything came about, because the movements and the animation, especially in that movie, like there were some crazy movements that I wouldn't even know where to start with that.
Yeah, and that was honestly, Rhianna, that was a little bit of the mentality of some of the animators sometimes, you know, because we, like in our first sequence, we had the character designer Craig Kellman come in, who's pretty outrageous. Like, and our first sequence, it was, you know, we went through the sequence, and Gendy and Craig, and I still have the drawings over here somewhere. It's just outrageous drawings of like, well, why don't you try this? Or why don't you try this? As we were trying to, we were kind of kicking off the sequence. And you know, we like there was one shot that we were even afraid to show the executives. And I remember Gendy saying, like, hey, if this gets to, you know, Bob Osher, don't stop on that frame, because he's going to freak out. You know, not, and it's like, what are you guys doing in this movie? But there was a lot of times where, you know, and you know, I was in supervision on that movie, so there was a lot of times when the animators would be like, we'd get a drawing from Gendy, and the rig was not really capable of doing what we need to do. I remember the Wolf Pups. There was one, oh man, Shad Bradbury, a great animator. Like his shot, the Wolf Pup, just the mouth would not do what it needed to do. And I went and I begged rigging, like, can you please, like, you know, just give a little more time to this and do this. And they were like, I'm sorry, I'm off the show. We can't do anything. And I went back to Shad and I was like, dude, this is the drawing. This is what you need to do. You just got to find some way to muscle this puppet into doing it. And sure enough, he did. And there was a million stories like that. There, you know, like, you know, the shot with oh shoot, who was it? It was I think it was Dracula and Frankenstein. He was holding the head, you know, the animator. I just, you know, I went through 5 rounds of like drawovers or you know, instruction of pushing that pose, like just like make his mouth bigger, giant, like this and this, just push it. I mean, that was kind of a motif of the show. It's like, how far can you go with this stuff, you know? And you know, if us in supervision are doing it, Gendy's definitely drawing it. You know, so yeah, it was just like, let's go broad. Let's see how broad we can go.
Wow. It sounds
And
like
that, honestly, that was always my desire. Like when I got into animation, I was very hesitant to go into 3D animation because I wasn't able to do the stuff that I could draw. And now that's what I love about now. It's like, you know what? Anything goes. We can, like, you know, like you can really do anything. And I feel like Cloudy and Hotel T kind of started that. And now it's, you know, it prepared me for Scooby Doo for sure.
oh wow. It sounds like definitely having a strong team with all these movies and shows definitely help, because without the team behind it, you need everyone's inputs with all the things. And as we mentioned before, you've worked with Michael Krinsky, and you both also worked on Scoob and Scoob Holiday Haunt. And for Scoob, you were the head of animation. So how did working for Scoob come along?
Well, yeah, I mean, I made a big decision after Hotel T that if I don't make this decision, I'm not working on Scoob, and I'm not directing this movie right now. So after Hotel T, I had been at Sony for close to 10 years, and I was like, well, what's next? And there was this company that was starting up in Florida that I was very much thinking about going to, because a lot of my friends, or a few of my friends, were going. But then an opportunity came along for this movie called Book of Life. That at that time it was called Day of the Dead, by Jorge Gutierrez. And I met Jorge in Burbank, and he pitched the movie to me. And Paul Sullivan, the amazing production designer, I saw a couple of his paintings, and I like fell in love with it right away. There was this giant bowl, and our lead character Manolo right below it. And I was like, holy crap, this is beautiful, like, and amazing. And how is anybody ever going to make this? Because it was very design, you know, very heavy on character design. But when I first met Jorge, the first thing I did, he comes into the hotel room where he was pitching this, busts through the door, and he's like, Bill, can you come to Dallas? That's the first thing he said to me, because I'm in LA, my kids are in LA, like we're LA people, and he's like, can you come to Dallas to work on this movie? And you know, he's such an infectious personality. He's a guy you should have on this show. You know, he's a great storyteller. Oh my gosh. But anyway, he pitched the movie. We talked about Hotel T, and he convinced me like to move to Dallas to come to this company, Real Effects, that was making it in Dallas. And you know, I bought in. So then that was a great experience. Working with Jorge was amazing. I ended up staying to work on another movie after that. There was a movie called Rock Dog that came after that. And you know, I was, after Book of Life, I was trying to figure out what we were going to do. We really were thinking about just coming to Texas for a year or two, and then we'll go back to LA, because my kids were missing it pretty big time. But then Rock Dog came along, and Ash Brannon, who's was the director on that, I knew him. He was one of the directors on Surf's Up, and we had a great relationship, and he asked me if I would anim direct on there. And I was like, oh, of course, you know, I got to. It's Ash. Like, I love this guy. So it was a really good experience. But right at the end of Rock Dog, I wasn't sure what was next again. And then one of the head of production at Real Effects called me into his office, and he said, Bill, there's this new project I want to talk to you about. And he pulls up this image on his computer, and it's all these Hanna-Barbera characters all around me. I'm talking Captain Caveman, Adamant, Great Babe, you know, Jabberjaw, and Scooby Doo's right in the middle. And I don't know if he looked at me, but my eyes probably just went boom. I was like, whoa. I was like, say no more, I am in. You know. And I was like, whatever I got to do to get this project, I will, you know, I am in. So we, you know, so it started, and first thing was just to meet with Tony and the director, and I already was familiar with Tony from, I was a really big fan of the Duck Dodgers show that him and Spike Brandt created. so I already knew kind of his work, and I knew you know, he was at Warner Brothers for a really long time, and so I was really excited to meet him. And once we met, we talked a little bit about Scooby Doo and inspirations, and I brought up a bunch of clips of things I think could help the project, and we just hit it off. Our minds were kind of the same, like our inspirations were the same, our sensibilities were the same, you know, and you can tell right away we're going to be a great match. So, you know, and then we did a little test. I could share that too, actually. That would be cool to show you. The very first thing that kind of sold it. Let me see. We basically did an image of Scooby Doo, or I posed a Scooby Doo. They built a model in a rig, very, very rudimentary. And we just did an image of him in front of a haunted house. And here, I'll share it. And this was what kind of sold it to Warner Brothers, like that this should be the production company that does it. Oops, here we go. And we just did a little camera move around it. Here we go. So this was the first test. So it's just basically a Scooby Doo in front of a haunted house.
That's so cool.
That was the very first one. It looked a little different than where we are now. And then also I did a little, they put a rig on it, so I did a little rough animation. Of it too. This is the very first.
Oh wow. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, there's like, hey, this is what it could be, you know, just a little bit of a tease is what it's supposed to be. So, you know, we got the project and we were off and running. You know, one of the first things I did, the very first thing I did to start this project, you know, because I'm a purist and I love, you know, like the classic Scooby Doo from 1969. I was like, well, I want to get in the head of what went into that. Why did this series, why is it still applicable? You know, 50 years later, it's still a thing. Like, why are we sitting here talking about it? Because it's a great character. And why is this a great character? What things do I have to do to make sure I carry on this legacy? Like that was really important to me. So first thing I did, I went and I did my homework. I love homework and research. So I saw Iwo Takamoto was the designer of Scooby Doo and many other Hanna-Barbera characters. So I went out and got his book. I don't know if you've read this book, but this is a great read. It's his biography about how he got it. Like there's amazing things with this guy. He was found by Walt Disney in a Japanese internment camp in Southern California during the 50s, I guess it was, is when he was discovered. And he was a guy who was doing sketches and stuff. Somehow Walt Disney got word of this and they brought him in, and he worked under Milt Kahl for many, many years, like one of the best animators ever, if not the best animator ever. Like he worked under him. So I knew, like, you know, the guy who designed this is something. He's not a hack. Like, and then I also went back to the season 1 and I looked at the credits. Like that was a big thing for me too. I wanted to see who was responsible for making this show. So I researched all of them, and it was amazing to me. Like I discovered, like, this was a lot of the Tom and Jerry crew from way back when. You know, Ed Lubb was on there, Lloyd Bond was on there, Don Patterson, who was the brother of Ray Patterson, Irv Spence was on there, which was great Tom and Jerry animator, one of my animation heroes. You know, and then of course Charles Nichols, who if you don't know that name, there's another little show called The Flintstones, which he was the animation director of both Flintstones and Scooby Doo. So I knew these guys were like, these were great guys, like, and you know, I'm following their footsteps. So a lot of times during Scoob and even Holiday Haunt, I would look at these scenes and be like, okay, would this go through the approval of like Herb Spence? Like, what would he do in this shot? Like, so there was always that little legacy that was kind of haunting me in the background, making sure I stay true to it. So, but anyway, that added a little bit of legitimacy to what we were doing when I saw that, like, these guys, these were people that worked on Pinocchio and Bambi and Tom and Jerry, and really it was a great crew. The only difference was the budget. That was the big thing. Like they had a very, very small budget and very small time frame to create this show. But they were great people, and we say it all the time on Scoob Holiday Haunt. I've said this so many times that I feel like in a small amount of time, when you don't have a whole lot of time to do something, if you get the right people in there, the right artists to do it, without having to overthink it and just let their craft do their thing, magical things happen. Because I've seen it on many. Hotel T was one of those shows. Honestly, we had zero time and budget was already gone, and like, okay, let's just make something cool. So yeah.
I mean, that's just it, really. That there's been so many instances of Scooby where it's just been lightning in a bottle. And they said that you can only really capture that once, but I think with Scooby, they've done it quite a few times. And you're absolutely right. It is a show that has lasted the test of time for 50 years. And no doubt it's going to last the test of time for another 50 years. I'll probably have great grandchildren that are like excited for the new Scooby Doo movie. So it's definitely a legacy that we're so happy that you're a part of. And in terms of Scoob, of course, the head of animation, what did that, I guess, entail for people, I guess, lay people not kind of in the know with animation?
Well, it was you're responsible for the performance and the the on model look. It's more than just performance with something like this. Like, obviously, as a head of animation, you're responsible for all the acting and the performance and the motion of these characters, which is in a lot of ways designed. You have to work really closely with the director and make sure you're getting it right. So like Tony and I became very close, just figuring out like how these characters are going to move and staying true to the original. But then there's also the on model aspects of these characters you really have to pay attention to as a head of animation. You're critiquing every shot, every frame of the film and making sure it's right. So, a lot, like I empowered a lot of what we call character specialists for all the characters to like learn the character. Here's the things that are really important and it has to be in the film. Just like shape language was a big thing in this. So if you really look, and this went right back to the original, the shape language, like Daphne, is basically an S curve. If you look at the original model sheet of the Scooby Doo lineup, Daphne has like an S curve through her body. She's like, there's a lot of contraposture in her form. Fred is a V, like for victory, basically. So he has broad shoulders like this, and then it comes into a V shape, and he's always standing. And we try to pose him in that shape. Velma is a block. She's very grounded, so she's very square, very rectangular as much as we could, all the time. And then Shaggy, we just wanted to make him lazy, a lazy curve all the time, and Scooby Doo always curves, Scooby had an interesting, like that. This was a really hard one. I could go on about this all day, but like Scooby, he really only worked in three views. Like, and Tony and I talked about this a lot. Like Ewo, I think if he would have realized, like when he designed this, I don't think he thought that in 50 years we would still be doing this and we would be doing CG versions of it where you see him from all angles and all this, because maybe he would have changed the design different. I don't know, but Scooby really only works from three views. He works from a front view, he works from a side view, a profile, or a 3/4. Anything in between, he goes way off modeling, looks weird. Like there was a story going around Hanna-Barbera, even before Tony's day, where he told me, he said when they talked about animating Scooby-Doo, if you have to turn his head from like here to here, he's Scooby-Doo, he's the kitchen sink, he's a boot, He's a chicken, and now he's just Scooby Doo again. And it's true. Like when we like so many times, there's always the notes I give, like, no, just rotate his head a little bit more. He's way off model. So there was like these things like that with that character. Like there was the chin. Like there's special things that Iwo did in the original design to make him Scooby Doo that we had to get in. Even stuff from the live action, and Rhythm Hughes did a great job, and I respect all they did. But there was some stuff in this film that I wanted to make sure we definitely got in, like the prototypical smile line, like when he like that curly smile line that Scooby has, it's got to be there. The weak chin, like Iwo specifically designed that. Like he took when he said when he designed this character, he found out what's the perfect show dog Great Dane, and then I'm gonna break like 5 or 6 things of it, and that's what he did. So Scooby Doo, like he has a really weak jaw. A real strong Great Dane has a strong jaw. They're big. So that was one of the biggest notes. Like I think the very last note I gave on the first Scoob, when I approved the last shot, I was like, okay, get rid of the dinosaur jaw. The dinosaur jaw was basically meant like it was out too far and it was too strong, and it looked a little bit like Gertie the dinosaur. So we were always pushing it back, and the model wouldn't do it for free, so you always had to fight it, and push it back. We kind of fixed that in Holiday Haunt. I hardly ever gave that note, but it was like that weak chin has to be there. That smile line has to be there. His ears always have to be asymmetrical. His eyes always have to be kind of asymmetrical. His back, it's not a strong back. It's an arch to the back. It has to be there, so it was all those kind of things you're always looking for.
I mean, it's a lot of attention to detail, but it was done so well. And so in regards to, like you say, the characters and everything were done incredibly, but like more specific in regards to scenes, is there any certain scenes that stand out to you from Scoob as ones that were most fun to work on?
Oh my gosh, yeah. It had to be the tribute to the original intro. Like when that came about, it was like, okay, we're going to do a montage to go from the kids to the adults. How do we do it? And I remember Tony coming to me and it's like, Bill, he's like, what do you think about let's just redoing the intro, and we go from kids to adults. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be incredible. And it was great. Like all the animators, it was like a competition for those shots. Everybody wanted to animate specific ones. Like as soon as they got wind of it, people were coming into the dailies room like, Bill, I got to work on that shot. I got to do that one. I got to do that one. I was like, oh yeah. So that was memorable. I even animated on that. I animated the shot with the kids running across one way and then the adults running back the other way.
See, I was just thinking the same thing, how like I imagine it would have been so difficult if you had like a supervising role where you couldn't actually work on that, because that must have been a dream for, like you say, so many animators to just have one of those scenes to animate.
Oh yeah, it really was. And we played around with how limited should we be in this too. Like the very last shot where you look at the book, or they're all looking at the book and then everybody looks up. We tried that 2 different ways. We tried it where it was really just 2 frames, just down and up, very exactly like the original. And then we ended up in between a little bit. So
I mean, like you're saying, because for a lot of things there's perhaps more than one concept and seeing kind of what works best. But is there any, scenes or ideas that you had that, were almost ready that didn't make it into the movie, or any kind of concepts that were scrapped along the way?
Yeah, like some of the stuff I really wanted to get, which we did get in Holiday Haunt. I really wanted to get a few more of the gimmick kind of stuff in there, like the Irv Spence zip lines. I really wanted to get a little bit more use of multiples, that like done like Wile E. Coyote multiples, like extreme smears and things like that. Things to just make it a little bit more 2D, especially the zip lines. We you know, me and Tony had talked about that for the first one, and you know, because of time and budget, we just never really got to get into it. So I made sure we got some of that in this new one, which is really great. Yeah.
So Scoob definitely was hit with some difficulties production with the COVID lockdowns. Did you ever have to like work on scenes remotely? And if so, I mean, what was it like to make all of these COVID adjustments?
Well, you know, honestly, you're talking about for the first Scoob?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that one, we really didn't get hit till it was done. You know, like at the very end, there was a little bit of it, yes. But as far as for animation, we wrapped pretty much a couple weeks before everything shut down in the country.
Oh, wow.
So it was a weird time. It's like I remember leaving, because most of the production was done in Montreal, and we spent most of the time in Montreal doing this. And it was somewhere around mid-February, early March. Animation wrapped. We were all together, you know, and I came back to Dallas, where I'm located, and and I was about to go on vacation, and it was like, you know, we had this big New York trip planned, and it's like everything just canceled, and we're like, okay, I guess we're not going anywhere. And then COVID just kind of hit, and it was really it was sad, because the one thing with this, the Scooby Doo's never really got a full CG theatrical release of a whole CG. So this was going to be it. And we were really excited about it, like, you know. So I think Black Widow went down first. That was the first, and that ended up getting aired later. And Scooby Doo was the second one, or Scoob was the second one. So it was hard.
So when Scoob did come out, how did you watch it, and what did you think?
Well, okay, what I did, like, well, yeah, it came out on HBO Max. We didn't really have, because it was so weird at times. Nobody wanted to be around anybody, so I built this kind of big screen. I have a projector at my house, so I took a projector, I built a big screen, and we have a pool, and so I did like a dive-in theater where I projected it off HBO Max onto the big screen by the pool, and we had kind of a pool party as a family, and watched Scoob for the first time.
Oh wow,
So
that's amazing. Like
we had to do something. Like, it's like, man, this sucks. We got to do something. Like, let's just have a pool party, and I'll project it on a big screen. Yeah,
I feel
it's
like
the closest I could get to a theater experience.
I mean, when lockdown restrictions started to ease, some theaters and cinemas did end up doing limited showings of Scoob. Did you manage to catch any of them, or was like your pool party the big screen viewing of it?
That was kind of it, because there was a drive-in theater that was pretty close that I think was going to show it, but we were waiting for it, and it was just such a scary time, and nobody knew what to do. I mean, did they have it in the UK? Did they have screenings in theaters?
Yes, JayBee and I
we wanted to see it in the cinemas that much that we went into Blackpool to see it. And if you're not in the UK, no one's going to understand how difficult that is, but that's a commitment.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. So yeah, that was tough, you know, and I know it hit, you know, Tony and me and Michael all really hard. So like, we took our efforts and we put it into Holiday Haunt, you know, honestly.
And like everyone I knew, and we were all looking forward for Scoob, and then pandemic hit, but when it came out, it was such a good movie, and it was worth the wait. And I guess moving on to something that will possibly be a wait as well is, after Scoob, we got an announcement that Holiday Haunt would follow, and we're going to handle this topic with a lot of care because of the recent circumstances surrounding it. But were you present while the early talks of Holiday Haunt were taking place?
Oh, like my hopes of whether it's going to happen, or when it's going to happen? Is that
like when Holiday Haunt was first, like, they were deciding if it was going to happen or not originally?
Yeah, yeah, that was interesting. The again, I think the same person who showed me the original Scoob poster when Scoob started, he called me and he's like, and I hadn't even heard from Tony yet or Michael, but he called me. It's like, hey, Bill, Warner Brothers is talking to us and they want to make another Scooby Doo movie. They're talking about it, and I was like, what? I was like, that's amazing. I was like, and obviously I'm in. Of course, I can't wait. You know, we were working on another project with Netflix at the time. It was kind of my COVID project. But I mean, you know, and I was excited to do Scoob. We were in the middle of that Netflix project, so it was a little bit of a tough time. That was during lockdown. But anyway, yeah, David told me like, okay, want to make another Scoob movie? It's going to be a Christmas movie, and Tony doesn't want to direct. He wants to executive produce. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. I was like, well, who's directing? And he's like, well, actually, they want you and Michael, production designer, to direct this movie. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. And I was so excited. You know, and yeah, then that's kind of how it started. And then, you know, just talk to Tony right away, talk to Michael right away. And the only thing was a little awkward for me. I was contracted, I was still contracted to finish anim souping the previous project. So I couldn't really jump on right away. So I was trying to do both, you know, both things at the same time, which was quite a challenge. Not only am I in COVID lockdown, but I'm trying to make my directorial debut and finish another animated project where I'm animation supervisor. So that was a little tricky.
No, that's interesting. So then, as far as you're aware, the Christmas prequel was always the plan for the follow-up of Scoob, or were there any other kind of concepts out there that you're aware of?
Well, no, it was because, you know, one of the feedback, like some of the feedback we got from the first Scoob was one that people loved the kids, they loved the mystery, and we took that to heart. Like let's make this a legitimate mystery, you know, like and shows like Stranger Things, you know, like kids solving mysteries is great. That's people like that. I love that. So we definitely wanted to kind of stay in that world, you know. And also, you know, again, it like mystery, I think we got a lot of feedback that there wasn't enough Scooby Doo mystery. People like the Rigby house and solving the mystery in the first one. So we're like, let's do that. Let's make this a legitimate. It's almost like it's a Scooby Doo episode that's a full movie. And we looked at things like Clue, which was great. Knives Out. We always kind of called this Knives Out for kids. You know, it was kind of what we were thinking. The show Only Murders in the Building was going on as we were making this, so we were looking at that a lot. It's like, okay, let's trick the audience. Let's try to make this as difficult to figure out who actually did this as possible, and that's not an easy task. Trying to write a whodunit mystery, you know. Also, the After Party, Chris Miller's show, I was looking at quite a bit, just kind of a mystery of who did it. But that's a hard thing to write and hard thing to figure out, and still keep it Scooby Doo, you know, which is always like that's the underlying motif of this, you know. So it was really fun. It was like creating that mystery and misdirect and trying to create interesting characters. Oh man, it was so much fun.
See, one of the things that had me most excited for this movie is the concept of it being a Christmas one. I mean, on the shelf next to us, we have about 50 Scooby Doo movies, and they've never done one that was set at Christmas, which to me is kind of baffling. I was excited to finally have like the one movie that joins the Christmas pile that, you know, is seen every year. So I think it was, you know, a really exciting concept in that regard as well. But unfortunately, I think it was 3 days after our interview with Michael Korinsky, we got the shocking news that the movie was going to be shelved. And since then, you know, the Scooby community has been trying to raise awareness with things like petitions, then hashtag Save Scoob Holiday Haunt and more. So what's your response been to that support?
Oh man, I love it. I like my appreciation. Thank you so much. And like like honestly, like I said, we made this for the fans, and we're fans. We made it for ourselves as fans, and we made it for you guys as fans. We wanted to create a great Scooby Doo Christmas movie, like, and I hadn't realized there hadn't been one done. That's amazing. So I mean, yeah, the outpouring support that we've got has been overwhelming, and yeah, I hope it helps. I hope it helps that, you know, this movie gets out there. I can't imagine this not getting out there at some point. I think, you know, at some point it will. You know, we talked about Top Gun. Top Gun sat on the shelf for 2 years and then came out and went crazy. So, you know, I hope it doesn't take 2 years, but I hope at least by next Christmas.
I think something similar happened to the Masters of the Universe, like live action movie, where they only had like 2 more scenes to finish filming, and then the director actually snuck in, filmed it, and then something happened in the studio, and then they're like, okay, let's just release it. It's basically done. So hopefully we see that with Holiday Haunt, that we don't have to wait too long.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the position we're in right now too, like just about. You know, it is going to be pretty much a finished movie that if they want to pull it off that shelf and figure out a way to release it, they will. And I'm certain someone will at some point. At least you know, I really hope so.
Yeah, we do sincerely hope so as well. I mean, like we say, it was a movie that I think everyone was just so excited to see, and I think the support the community has shown really kind of sheds light on that. So since, you know, the news came out about the movie being shelved, a lot more details came out about the movie itself. For instance, Patrick Warburton was going to return in their role of Sheriff Bronson Stone. So did you get to work with them directly?
Oh my gosh, he was hilarious. Like, we only had 45 minutes with Patrick, and he's such a pro. Like he's worked on the Mystery Incorporated series and a lot. He's done so much. Yeah, I remember having to animate him on Open Season actually at Sony. He was the character Ian. But he was brilliant. He was so professional. He was one of the actors we really didn't have to give a whole lot of direction. It was just like, okay, Patrick, here's your lines. If you could come up with something even better, great. And he had us literally laughing, like almost falling on the floor laughing for 45 minutes straight. He was incredible. I mean, there was stuff in there that we ended up putting in the movie that wasn't even scripted. You know, like he's great. He yeah, love working with that guy. We even did a homage to Seinfeld, his character in Seinfeld in our movie. There's so many, like I should really write down all the different inspirations and homages that we did in Holiday Haunt, because it's a lot. Yeah, but he was great. Also, JayBee Smooth was pretty funny. He has a very minor part, but he's one of the guys who came in just for an hour, and you know, well, not even an hour, and read a bunch of lines. He was completely hilarious. And then I know at the very end, I said to him, I was like, JayBee, kind of surprised you didn't throw any profanities into this, like knowing your background. And that was just like turning the light switch on for him. He was like, oh, well, I didn't know I was allowed to. And then he goes off. It's really crazy. but so many, like, oh, my dogs are out now. But there was like the voice talents we were able to get in the movie was incredible. Like I feel very privileged for the cast that we were able to get. We got all 4 of the kids back, which was great. We got Michael McKean to play our Uncle Ned, who's an incredible actor, and like the storytelling that he does is amazing. Like he's just a great actor and great storyteller. Mark Hamill, I know that's been publicized now. That was a real treat for sure. You know, yeah, Luke Skywalker to have in our movie, that's amazing. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you could possibly reveal about what the fans could have expected from the movie?
Okay, well, yeah, and I know I have to be kind of a little bit careful with what I say. I mean, it's definitely a real Scooby Doo mystery is one of the things. There's there's like some really cool chase scenes in this movie, a lot of cool action in this movie. We have monsters in this movie. We have 3 monsters in this movie, which is really good. And we kind of went back to some of the, you know, we looked at like Christmas and what kind of characters are Christmas, kind of scary Christmas characters. And there might be some of those type of characters in this movie.
Initially, I was thinking Krampus, but just the
Yeah.
association with 3 and then Christmas, I'm kind of thinking
Oh.
Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, Future. That would be a
Yeah.
cool spin, but I'm not pressing for anything.
We kind
No
of created
spoilers. Go
one
on, see
new
it.
character. We kind of created one new type of character, but then we also included some familiar legendary Christmas characters. We did have one that we had in, but it didn't make the cut because I think we were getting too many, was the Yuletide cat, I think, which is in what country is that from? I can't remember now. Was it France? But that was, but if you're, you know, if you think along those lines, there might be a little bit of that in this movie, which is great.
We were super happy to see that there was a cast and crew screening of Holiday Haunt pretty recently. It looks like it was overall a happy event, but we can't imagine it being very bittersweet too. From your experience, kind of what was the vibe of that day?
That was incredible. That was an incredible day. And in fact, Michael and I still talk about that day. It was just, you know, we didn't know what to expect, but you know, we introduced the movie and we had like some of our cast there. It was pretty small. It was all our LA based crew. And then Ming Na Wen was able to, she's one of our cast. She was able to go. Ian Armitage was able to go, which was really great. You know, Ben Ruby was able to go. Misty Lee was able to go. Like, so, and Frank Welker. If there's one big thing, I had not met Frank Welker in person before, and just to sit down and talk to him, and I told him like the same thing, like, hey, I was an 8-year-old kid that you inspired me, you know. Actually, that was one of the things too that was really great. You know, working with Frank, we recorded him many times, but every once in a while, he would go into a voice, and his voice has a tendency to be a little bit like Fred, because he was the original voice of Fred. Every once in a while, he would just be like, oh, hey, that sounded a little bit like Fred. And then Frank would go into the Fred voice, and it was like, ooh, that's like, gives me goosebumps when I hear this. So, but anyway, the cast was there. You know, me and Michael gave a little talk ahead of time and then showed the movie, and it was a big applause at the end from everybody, and that just meant everything. So that was really cool. And then we kind of stayed afterwards, took photos and reminisced, and you know, wished well, and you know talked about, you know, the support and all that. So yeah, that was a very special time for all of us, and honestly, we kind of needed it. Like, we had felt beat up by all the events, and you know, it was really nice. And then later we spent the rest of the afternoon with Ian. Ian was shooting his Young Sheldon show, you know, just a little bit away from where we did the screening. So we kind of hung out with him and his mom, and showed us the set of the show, and yeah, it was really great. It was a great day. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It really does sound like one of the most special days ever, and we're really glad that you got to see like a screening of the movie and spend time with people who worked hard on it. Unfortunately, you know, as you said, not everyone was there, but it must have been so special, and you must have made so many incredible memories. And recently, ComicBook.com reported that Warner Brothers Discovery had plans to go the distance to give the go-ahead to complete the movie, but possibly not release it until a later date, if at all. So from your understanding, do you know if there is any weight to this rumor, or is it just a rumor and not true?
Well, there is hope that maybe this will be released sometime, certainly from us internally, and we are finishing. So we will be finishing, you know, in the next few weeks, and then we'll see what happens. You know, there's still little things that will have to be done, but it was bizarre because, you know, when this news broke, I literally, well, actually the day it broke, I was working, I was actually animating a little bit on one of our, you know, there is maybe a post-credit scene in this movie, and I was working just a little bit on the post-credit, and then my son sends me this text. He's in the other room. I don't know why he just didn't come over, but he sent me a text. He's like, Daddy, does this have anything to do with your movie? And it was the Batgirl article, and I hadn't read all the way down through, and I wrote him back. He's like, no, I'm sure it's nothing. And then I get a phone call, and then here I, you know, found out the news from our producer and Tony, which was devastating. Yeah. And then an hour later, my son does this petition, which was like the same one that you guys did, which was like, okay, here comes the support. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's anything, you know, to say at all, I think when the movie does eventually come out, I think the positive that you can extract from it is that I think there'll be so much more, you know, active and vocal goodwill towards it than possibly before because of what's happened. So, you know, we are very hopeful that it's going to happen, and the support is definitely there. But I guess from the wider Scoobyverse and impacts that this could have possibly had, from your knowledge, do you know if there was any merch or any like tie-in media that could have come from this movie that has also been put on hold due to the shelving?
Yeah, the marketing campaign really didn't start. And maybe that should have been a sign that something was brewed. Like we knew something was going on a few, you know, like once Toby Emmerich had left, like we knew that maybe this might get pushed a little bit or something might happen, like, you know, something might happen. So that was a big part of it. It was funny because Toby Emmerich coming to Warner Brothers was part of the first Scoob happening. I remember like there was a changeover in the guard during the first Scoob, because I was on the first Scoob for 5 years. Like I started in 2015 and it released in 2020. And I probably have like 5 or 6 versions of the script behind me here, you know, of different versions of the movie. The first movie had the Harlem Globetrotters actually in it.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. A lot of different characters. You know, and then, you know, Toby and Chris Columbus was a little part of getting it going, you know, and then on this one, like Toby leaving, you know, I don't know. It's just kind of ironic.
No, it's weird how it goes. But again, like as you say, you know, we are firm believers that we're going to be able to see the movie one day, and you know, I think that everyone's going to absolutely love it when it does come out. And really, I think that's all of the questions that we have for you today. Apart from, I guess, where's the best place for people watching this to keep up with your work and to keep up with progress on the whole, you know, Save Scoob Holiday Haunt campaign in general?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, I'm not quite as active on social media as I probably should be, but maybe I will be now that I have a little more time. But certainly on Twitter or, you know, Facebook, you can certainly reach me, and I'll try to keep updates as much as I can. Honestly, anything happens with this and it, you know, and we're releasing anytime soon, or when we do release, please like contact me. I'll be happy to come on and talk everything about it then for sure. That, you know, I'll reveal all the secrets.
Oh, thank you so much. That is absolutely incredible. And just overall, like, thank you so much for like all the hard work that you've put into all of the films that you've been involved with and Holiday Haunt, and just for the amount of time that you've given us today. You know, you've given so much of it. So thank you so much for that. That's just been absolutely incredible. So
it's been my pleasure for sure. Yes.
And for people watching this, I'm going to leave any petition that I can find in the description down below. Please do sign all of them. We're going to have the hashtags down there as well. Make sure to tweet that out, put it on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, anywhere like that you can find. And of course, you can find all of the social links for us, Rhianna and Tori as well. So, you know, thank you so much for watching it today. And please like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.
I have a, like, this was kind of in before we kind of got started again. We did a Captain Caveman test. Did you guys ever see that?
No.
I've seen
I had
kind of
Boomerang,
features and
so I
things.
watched all of those.
Did you see the Captain Caveman one in the what do we call it? Well, here, let me show you really quick. Let me see if you saw this one.
I would have loved to see the Harlem Globetrotters. I remember they came to our hometown, and I only knew them because of Scooby Doo.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I used to watch Boomerang, was the channel where like the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Scooby Doo, all like that's how I consumed it a lot. So that's how I knew about some of the original Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Jabberjaw, loved it.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Did you ever see this one? Okay, this was us trying to figure out Captain Caveman before, and you know what? In the first Scoob, Captain Caveman really wasn't in. We were 6 weeks away from wrapping animation, if that, and we weren't sure if Captain Caveman was in the movie. So he's been along, and he's one of my favorite Hanna-Barbera characters. But this was a test. Like,
Head on fire! Head on fire!
Oh, that's amazing.
Oops. Had you seen that before?
I've never seen that.
No.
before.
That's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, that was done kind of when the show was, well, actually before Michael came on. We were trying to keep the show going and we did a trailer too. I don't know if you ever saw, or not a trailer, this one with Scooby and Shaggy in the back of the van, and Blue Falcon shows up.
Oh, I've not seen.
No.
I
You
think
guys
it's a
ever see
lot.
that?
No.
Okay, I have to show you that one too. Then you're gonna like this. And this is one where this was one where it was a little discovery, going back to the evolution of Scoob. We kind of started with Scoob, and he kind of went into the real dog world for quite a while, and we weren't really sure. The very first image that we did, Tom Jordan did a model of Scooby Doo and Shaggy, and it looked like our classic Scooby Doo model. And then we kind of diverted and went this route. We almost went into a real dog and a real Shaggy. And, you know, it took until Chris Columbus came in, and around the time Krinsky jumped on, where they said, well, you know, you already have these designs. Why don't you just do what's already been done? And it was almost giving us permission to do what we already knew, because we were leaning for it for years towards that. We were always looking back at the original model sheets, but weren't quite going there. So this trailer kind of has this is kind of a Scooby, but Shaggy's kind of like, who is that guy next to Scooby? So we weren't really committed, but it was an interesting test that kind of kept the movie going. So let me share this. Here we go.
Stunning.
Very different Shaggy.
Those are pretty good. Is that sriracha flavor? Hey man, get your own bag.
That was one of the, yeah, that was our title at the time. Yeah.
Wow.
No way.
Post some of this stuff actually. Now I think I'm allowed to, so I probably should.
Yeah, I mean,
I will post that somewhere for sure.
That's incredible.
So that was stuff like that that kept the movie alive, even though we were rewriting stories and trying to figure out, we were still developing and you know, at the very least figuring out what can Blue Falcon look like? How can he move? And how can the Falcon Fury, you know, fly and on all this stuff. So
That animation was stunning. Like just some of the
Yeah.
detail and everything. It looked gorgeous. It looked incredible.
yeah,
I think that may be one of the best things I've ever seen in my whole life.
and literally did we know we were only halfway through at that point. Michael didn't even come on yet. And then, you know, when Michael came on, that was interesting too, because sorry, I know we're already finished, but I should say this. We had it was kind of, the movie was in a little bit in hiatus, and I remember we didn't have a production designer at that time. The previous one had left, and our VFX soup came up to me and was like, "Hey Bill, you know, we got a new production designer on the movie," and he's like, "I think you might know this guy." And I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Who is it?" And he's like, "Some guy named Karakowski." I was like, "Mike Karinsky?" And he's like, yeah, that's him. I was like, dude. I was like, and honestly, I tell Michael this all the time too. I feel like that's a point where I knew, okay, we are in good shape. This move, like I knew Michael from Cloudy, and you know, I knew our sensibilities matched, and we're gonna make a cool looking movie. He like, I was like, this is perfect. This combination is gonna be great. So yeah, that was a great moment from the first Scoob. I remember it was kind of a turning point, because then we went back to original designs, really started looking at the 1969 version. Like we knew we finally had our permission to do it and go there. And yeah, and then everything kind of changed.
That's fantastic. I feel like I could just have an hour just
Rewatching that on
like
repeat.
just with your Scooby files in front of me, and I'll just be there watching it, just trying to like absorb it all in. That's just, I can't believe
Like,
that.
That looked
incredible.
incredible.
So cool.
Okay, one last one then, because one of the challenges with Scooby Doo too, like I said, you could only see him from three angles, like different angles. Okay, one of the discoveries we've made too, well, there was a couple, like on the first one. Yeah, I'll try to make this last thing. One, like me and Tony, we thought Scooby Doo was pretty much mostly, you know, a dog through most of the movie. And at some point I was like, Tony, I think I'm going to go back and look at the original series, but I think there's more bipedal Scooby than we're paying attention to. And like, we might have to create a bipedal rig for Scooby. So I went back and I looked at I counted how many scenes of the series in the first two episodes there was bipedal, and it was overwhelming. It was like 40% of the time he's doing things where he's like a human, you know, like he's a bipedal, you know, not on all fours. So we had to create dog hands for him, shoulders for him, so he can like shoulder shrug, because a dog's shoulder doesn't do this way, it goes this way. So it's like all these technicalities. And then also you don't see him from the back. Like they never showed Scooby from the back, you know. So Ewo kind of designed this kind of duck waddle for Scooby's kind of, you know, walk. Again, like it's not the perfect Great Dane, but what's that look like from the back? Like you never saw it. So I did this animation test of Scooby and Shaggy on the beach walking up to a very familiar place, you'll see. And it showed Scooby from the back, and we were trying to hide it. And then finally Tony was like, you know what, this test showed us like we got to figure out how he looks from the back, because you're going to see him. There's no hiding it in a feature. So here's a test of, and this is that kind of not our real Shaggy yet. This is the old Shaggy, but this is just a test of them on the beach walking. With a very familiar building there in the background, which was a part of our movie at that time.
I love the little like water, like that's how I've got
Yes.
a dog called Tattoo, and Tatty, when she's like walking, and we call it her sassy walk, she'll like do a
Oh.
little sway and she'll walk like that. It's hilarious.
It's cute, right? Yeah.
I think Quest does make it in the kind of when the credits, all the like the names come up in. I think that's when your name pops up as well, isn't it? Like, aren't Quest working on like the Impossibles, and that's when your name, along with like the Hoover robot, it says like head of animation, Bill Haller. So that's kind of interesting. I like that.
Yeah. There's been maybe some Quest Lab stuff in Holiday Haunt too, possibly.
We need to save this movie.
I know there's so many things I want to talk to you guys about.